What's it like to have a beautiful, elegant, and seductive wife? Most men would probably feel happy and proud, right? But for Paul, a Frenchman, it became an endless torment. What exactly happened? Let's explore this haunting family thriller. Paul is a sensitive and suspicious Frenchman who runs a tourist inn in a scenic seaside town. Shortly after moving there, he met the gorgeous and seductive Nellie. The two fell in love at first sight and quickly got married. Before long, they had a lovely son. However, since the child's birth, Paul felt a growing distance between him and his wife. At first, their young son would cry every night, demanding Nellie's full attention. Paul, busy during the day catering to demanding guests, hoped to spend sweet evenings with his wife. Yet, the child's cries always interrupted their time together. The mounting pressure suffocated Paul and he relied on medication to sleep. After enduring a few years, the son grew older and less dependent on Nellie. But the inn became busier, attracting regulars who treated it as a holiday retreat. Besides the stunning scenery, many guests were drawn by the charming owner, Nellie. Her lively, outgoing personality and sensual aura captivated countless men. Every time Paul saw Nellie chatting and laughing with other men, he felt uneasy. He often observed her secretly, worried she might cross the line. However, Nellie always maintained her vivacious charm without overstepping boundaries. One busy afternoon, Nellie was nowhere to be found. When Paul returned from errands, the receptionist complained that Nellie had disappeared during peak hours. As Paul began searching for her, he noticed the small lounge's door closed and curtains drawn. A surge of suspicion overwhelmed him. He flung open the door to find Nellie alone with a wealthy guest named Martin. Paul questioned why the curtains were drawn in broad daylight. Nellie calmly explained they were viewing slides. Without saying much, Paul asked her to help in the dining room, then wandered to the beach, lost in thought. Conflicted, he felt torn between two voices, one doubting Nellie's fidelity and the other urging him to trust her. After a while, he calmed down and returned to the inn with a smile, saying nothing about his suspicions. But once the seed of doubt is planted, it grows uncontrollably. A few days later, Nellie returned from a shopping trip with the inn's photographer. The man chivalrously carried her bags and kissed her arm when they parted. Enraged, Paul questioned her, but Nellie remained cheerful and carefree, even teasingly pleased. To her, Paul's jealousy was proof of his love. Despite her confidence, Paul's doubts deepened. Secretly, he rummaged through her shopping bags and found an expensive designer handbag, something far beyond what their budget could afford. Paul suspected another man had gifted it to her, but decided to stay quiet and gather more evidence. The next day, Nellie said she was visiting her parents, dressed up beautifully as if for a date. Overcome with suspicion, Paul followed her. He discovered Nellie first met a friend to show off her new bag before wandering the streets alone. Paul trailed her closely but lost her in the bustling crowd. Moments later, he spotted a familiar man in a flashy sports car turning down the street where Nellie disappeared. It was Martin, the wealthy guest who had once been alone with her. Paul suspected Martin of being Nellie's lover, and he was certain the designer handbag had been Martin's gift. Determined to uncover the truth, Paul trailed Martin's car, but he soon lost sight of it. With no other leads, Paul decided to try his luck at his in-laws' house. Unexpectedly, before he could knock on the door, a familiar voice called out to him. It was Nellie, sitting in a nearby cafe. She explained that her parents were out, so she was waiting outside. Curious, she asked Paul why he was there at that moment. Paul, flustered, offered a vague and incoherent explanation. Nellie, usually easygoing, noticed that Paul seemed to be following her. Rather than confront him, Nellie decided they should return home together. During the walk back, both were lost in their thoughts, and the atmosphere grew tense. Paul couldn't stop picturing intimate scenes between Nellie and Martin. Unable to hold back, he asked Nellie where the money for the handbag had come from. Nellie explained that she had won it betting on horse races but hadn't mentioned it earlier because she knew Paul disliked gambling. She also revealed that part of her winnings was with a friend who owned a shop. The next day, Paul visited Nellie's friend to verify her story, but the shop was closed with a temporarily out of business sign on the door. Paul's suspicions deepened. Distraught, he wandered to the beach, where he saw Nellie surfing behind a speedboat. Driving the boat was Martin. Nellie, in a revealing swimsuit, laughed radiantly, further fueling Paul's jealousy. He sprinted along the shore, chasing the boat until it docked. Hiding nearby, Paul watched as Martin and Nellie emerged from the woods, laughing and chatting. Martin even helped Nellie onto the yacht. Though their behavior was not overly intimate, Paul's jealousy and shame overwhelmed him. Collapsing onto the grass, he lay there until nightfall before returning home, disheveled and broken. Nellie, worried, had been anxiously waiting for him. Seeing his state, she was filled with concern and tenderly asked what was wrong. She helped him out of his shoes and cleaned him up. Paul blurted out everything he had seen, accusing her of infidelity. Nellie, exasperated, explained that there was nothing between her and Martin. However, Paul, in despair, remained silent, lying in bed without a word. Frustrated and hurt, Nellie grabbed his shirt and vented her feelings. She recounted how she had searched for him everywhere during his absence, fearing he might have done something drastic due to stress. Yet all he could think about were baseless suspicions. Overwhelmed, Nellie broke down in tears. Her raw emotions finally broke through Paul's doubts. He apologized and they reconciled in a tight embrace. Unfortunately, the peace was short-lived. Not long after, Paul's paranoia resurfaced when Martin called Nellie about his checkout. Misinterpreting this as evidence of a secret connection, Paul confronted Nellie. She angrily clarified the purpose of the call, and Paul quickly switched to apologizing and soothing her. Soft-hearted, Nellie forgave him again. But within days, Paul was back to his obsessive behavior. One afternoon, the photographer who had once kissed Nellie's hand invited everyone to watch a video he had filmed. The footage showcased the town's scenery, and naturally, the charming Nellie was a prominent subject. As the guests admired Nellie's beauty, Paul grew increasingly agitated. The video also included a scene of Martin helping Nellie with her shoes during their surfing session. Fuming, Paul drowned his jealousy in alcohol, his mind replaying imagined scenes of intimacy between Nellie and Martin. Drunk and enraged, he shattered his glass and stormed over to the projector, shutting it off and hurling insults at everyone present. Startled by his outburst, Nellie tried to calm him down by promising to limit interactions with male guests. But the more Nellie conceded, the more controlling Paul became. Even her normal conversations with male guests provoked his ire, leading to sharp accusations. Unable to endure his escalating behavior, Nellie snapped and sarcastically admitted to having an affair, further straining their relationship. The tension finally erupted on a stormy night. A lightning storm caused a blackout, leaving the inn lit only by candlelight. When Nellie disappeared during the outage, Paul searched everywhere and found her bracelet in the attic. His mind conjured images of her engaging in an affair there. In reality, Nellie had been distributing candles to the guests, and the bracelet had fallen while she was retrieving supplies. Consumed by jealousy, Paul barged into the photographer's room, convinced he'd find Nellie there. Though only the photographer was present, the sight of 2 wine glasses on the table was enough to confirm Paul's suspicions. Enraged, he accused the photographer of having an affair with Nellie and demanded he leave the inn. The photographer, bewildered, could only stare at Paul as if he were mad. When Paul returned to his room, Nellie was already there, unaware of his earlier outburst. Without warning, Paul snapped and began assaulting her. The next morning, Nellie went to the town doctor's house. She had just finished receiving treatment when Paul barged in. The doctor, who was a longtime acquaintance of the couple and often treated their son, initially intended to mediate between them. However, Paul showed no remorse for his abusive behavior. Instead, he arrogantly accused Nellie of being a harlot and used cruel and filthy language to berate her. Nellie, unable to argue back, could only cover her face and cry. The doctor, unsure of what to do, felt helpless. After some thought, Nellie decided to call a friend who was a psychologist, hoping that a professional could mediate their marriage problems. Unfortunately, the psychologist lived far from the town and couldn't arrive immediately. The doctor, unable to host Nellie at his home for long, reluctantly suggested that she return home with Paul. Once home, Paul locked all the doors and windows. But even that wasn't enough to ease his paranoia. That night, Paul's behavior became even more erratic. He laid Nellie on the bed, determined to keep this beautiful woman completely imprisoned by his side. Nellie, however, was running a high fever and was so weak and delirious that she couldn't resist. As Nellie's condition worsened, Paul became both irritable and panicked. In a daze, he thought he saw an ambulance parked outside. This prompted him to gently clean Nellie up, telling her he would take her to the doctor. But as he was shaving, images of Nellie with other men flashed through his mind again. Consumed by jealousy, Paul slowly approached Nellie with the razor. When he snapped out of his trance, he noticed a faint cut on his own face, bloodstains on the razor, and blood on his clothes. Nellie, still tied to the bed, was pale and lifeless. Paul couldn't remember what he had done. He had no idea whether the blood came from himself or Nellie, nor did he dare to check if she was still breathing. And that's where the story ends. This plot bears a striking resemblance to the domestic drama Don't Talk to Strangers. The male protagonist in Torment likely suffers from a mental illness known as Othello's syndrome, also called pathological jealousy. Patients with this condition experience extreme insecurity and are obsessed with the belief that their partner is unfaithful. They often resort to interrogation, stalking, surveillance, and even violence in their attempts to gather evidence of infidelity. In severe cases, this illness can lead to physical attacks or even murder of the partner. Such a partner is truly terrifying. Let's hope everyone is careful when choosing a partner. That's it for today's video. If you enjoy suspense, crime, and thriller movies, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.